It was supposed to be another routine segment, another debate panel framed for evening cable. But nobody expected what happened next. The show was Capital Focus, a primetime political roundtable hosted by veteran journalist Dana Mitchell. That night's episode promised sparks, featuring Representative Jasmine Crockett, known for her sharp retorts and unflinching facts, and Candace Owens, the conservative firebrand with a massive following and a no-holds-barred style. 10 minutes into the segment, Dana tried to steer the conversation toward congressional oversight and government transparency. But Owens, as always, had other plans. "This administration is hiding everything," Candace declared, gesturing toward Crockett. "And Democrats like her are complicit in the silence." Jasmine calmly adjusted her mic. "That's a bold accusation, Candace. Do you have facts or just feelings?" The audience chuckled, but Owens didn't flinch. "Let's talk about your silence, Congresswoman. Where were you when federal spending reports disappeared from the public database last month?" Crockett leaned forward, her voice measured. "You really want to go there, Candace?" "Because I came prepared." Dana tried to interject, but Jasmine waved a single paper in front of the camera. "This," she said, "is a redacted internal memo from the Office of the Inspector General, confirming that 2 conservative-aligned PACs received emergency grants through a COVID loophole, while your name, Candace, appears in a lobbying email tied to one of them." The panel went silent. Owens blinked. "Excuse me? That's a lie." "It's a public record," Jasmine replied coldly. "And it was released this morning." Candace's expression cracked for the first time. She fumbled for a response, but nothing came out fast enough. Dana, sensing the weight of the moment, glanced to the producers off camera. The live feed was rolling, and the internet was already exploding. The control room scrambled. Dana Mitchell, ever the composed host, tried to rein in the moment. "Let's all take a breath," she said, turning toward the camera. "This is a developing topic. Representative Crockett, are you saying Candace Owens is personally tied to misused federal relief funds?" "I'm not saying it," Jasmine said coolly, holding the document higher. "The Inspector General's office is." The email chain references a public advocate who facilitated backdoor communications with lawmakers. "That advocate used your verified business email, Candace." Candace Owens looked visibly shaken. "I've worked with dozens of nonprofits. If someone used my name, you didn't just lend your name," Jasmine cut in. "You sent talking points. You met with a subcommittee staffer on January 12th. I've got the calendar entry. Want to deny that?" Candace slammed her hand on the table. "That meeting was about school choice." "Then why," Jasmine said sharply, "does the staffer's memo from that same day mention strategic dispersal of funds to sympathetic media influencers?" "That's what you are, right?" Dana's voice tried to cut through the tension. "Okay, let's not turn this into a trial," but it was too late. The broadcast chat was lighting up. Social media clips were already trending. #Crockett vs. Owens was the top tag within minutes. Candace tried to rally. "You don't intimidate me, Jasmine. You think just because you can wave around paperwork." "This isn't just paper," Jasmine replied. "This is why I got elected. To stop political grifters from getting rich while Americans struggle." Candace's eyes narrowed. "You want to start a war with me? Fine. But you better come armed with more than office memos." "Oh," Jasmine said, folding her hands calmly, "you haven't seen the attachments yet." Dana sat back in her chair. The commercial break couldn't come fast enough. The moment the show cut to commercial, the studio erupted in tension. Producers swarmed the stage, whispering frantically into earpieces. Interns darted between camera setups, and Dana Mitchell sat frozen, staring down at her notes, silently praying this didn't escalate into a legal fiasco. Candace Owens stood up and leaned toward Jasmine Crockett, her voice lowered but furious. "You blindsided me." Jasmine didn't flinch. "You attacked first. I just came with receipts. You don't know who you're messing with." I know exactly who I'm dealing with. That's why I brought backup." At that, Jasmine slid a slim manila folder across the table, unseen by the cameras but caught by one sharp-eyed assistant producer. Inside, according to what Jasmine would later confirm, were 3 more internal communications, this time with financial routing info and 2 PAC-linked media contracts bearing Candace Owens' signature. When the show returned from break, Dana tried to cool the segment. "Welcome back. Before the break, things got intense. We want to remind viewers that all claims are under review, and no official conclusions have been drawn." Candace reappeared on camera with a thin smile, her public face back in place, but her posture rigid. "I want to make something very clear," she said firmly. "This is a smear campaign. I will be consulting with legal counsel, and I expect a full retraction from Congresswoman Crockett." Jasmine blinked. "Then I hope your lawyer is faster than the Federal Audit Committee, because they just opened an inquiry." Dana's eyes widened. "Wait, that's breaking news?" Jasmine nodded. "It's official. The memo I just referenced is part of an ongoing investigation. The Department of Justice is looking into misuse of pandemic relief lobbying by media entities, including Candace's former nonprofit, Liberty Path Forward." The air left the room. Even Candace couldn't mask the moment of panic. "That nonprofit was dissolved last year." "Exactly," Jasmine said. "Right after the subpoenas were issued. And with that, it wasn't just political anymore, it was potentially criminal." The live audience was dead silent, no whispers, no reactions, just stunned stillness. Candace Owens' carefully constructed image was beginning to slip. Her confident posture had turned defensive, and her gaze shifted frequently toward the camera feed monitors, as if trying to assess how badly the damage was playing out in real time. Dana Mitchell, sensing the gravity, adjusted her tone. "Congresswoman Crockett, are you saying Candace Owens is being investigated as part of a federal probe?" "I'm saying her name is in the documents," Jasmine clarified. "She may not be the target, but she's certainly in the blast radius." Candace forced a laugh. "This is pure political theater. Jasmine, you're desperate for a viral clip. Congratulations, Twitter's probably handing you a trophy as we speak." Jasmine smiled. "You can call it viral. I call it accountability." Dana leaned in, trying to mediate. "Congresswoman, what exactly is Liberty Path Forward accused of?" Jasmine pulled a page from the folder. "Unregistered lobbying. Misreporting of donor contributions. And funneling pandemic relief funds through shell organizations disguised as outreach campaigns." "And Candace's involvement?" Dana asked carefully. "There's an email from her," Jasmine replied, dated March 6, 2022. In it, she discusses creating persuasive narratives for targeted regions in exchange for media consulting contracts. "That's not advocacy. That's paid influence." Candace's voice was sharp now. "You better hope your claims hold up in court. Because I'm coming for you." Jasmine didn't blink. "You've spent years trying to own the libs. Maybe it's time someone owned the truth." The panel sat in silence. Then Dana, always the professional, turned to the camera. "We're going to a quick break. Stay with us." As the show faded to commercial, Twitter exploded. Trending across the country, #Owens exposed, #Crockett receipts, #pandemic PAC scandal, and just like that, what began as another primetime debate had transformed into the political bombshell of the week. The commercial break did little to cool the fire. In fact, backstage producers were now frantically reviewing legal guidelines as the network's legal team dialed in. Dana Mitchell was handed a new cue card with fresh instructions: stick to facts, avoid implications, and don't editorialize. But the audience didn't want restraint. When the show resumed, Dana's tone was crisp. "We're back. Due to the serious nature of the information presented, we've been asked to clarify, all parties mentioned are presumed innocent, and all claims are subject to further verification. That said, Congresswoman Crockett, you've just shaken the political media landscape. What happens next? Jasmine glanced at her phone, then calmly said, well, apparently the Oversight Committee just confirmed they've added Liberty Path Forward to their hearing schedule next week. I guess transparency moves faster when the public's watching. Candace's jaw visibly clenched. You think this is funny? She snapped. You think dragging my name into a witch hunt will help your poll numbers? I think the truth helps everybody, Jasmine said. Especially the taxpayers who had no idea their relief money was being siphoned off to fund political media consultants. You don't get to lecture me about ethics. Candace shouted, losing her composure for the first time. You represent a party that's mastered backroom deals. And yet here we are, Jasmine said, cool as ever, with your name in the documents, not mine. The tension in the room hit a boiling point. Dana interjected again, trying to salvage control. Let's shift focus. Congresswoman, are you suggesting this is part of a larger scheme involving multiple media personalities? Oh, absolutely, Jasmine replied. And if Congress is serious about rooting out corruption, it won't stop with Candace. She's just the loudest voice in a very lucrative echo chamber. Candace looked ready to respond, but this time, she didn't. She sat back. Silent. Fuming. Because she knew what was coming next. Candace's silence was louder than any rebuttal. For the first time, her confident armor looked cracked. The sudden stillness wasn't strategic, it was the kind of silence that follows a gut punch. And Jasmine Crockett wasn't done. Dana Mitchell, now walking a razor's edge between sensational and safe, turned to the Congresswoman again. You mentioned Candace isn't the only one. Are you prepared to name others? Jasmine didn't hesitate. Not tonight. But the Oversight Committee will. There are 6 names in the OIG memo tied to pandemic-era lobbying abuses, 3 of them are regular media figures, 2 are former Hill staffers, and 1 is an elected official. The studio gasped. Candace finally spoke, her voice lower, steadier. You're playing with fire, Jasmine. Tossing out claims on live TV without confirming what's actually real. Oh, it's real, Jasmine replied. The only thing uncertain now is how fast the public will demand action. Because the game of hiding behind influence and outrage is over. Candace sat forward, locking eyes with Jasmine. You think the media's your friend now. But just wait. When the facts don't match the headlines, they'll eat you alive too. Jasmine leaned in without flinching. I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to be heard. And after tonight, millions are finally listening. Behind the cameras, network executives were already planning a follow-up segment. Producers were fielding interview requests from every major outlet. And on social media, Jasmine Crockett's name was now the top trending political hashtag in the country. Meanwhile, Candace Owens stared at the papers in front of her, papers she hadn't seen before tonight, wondering just how deep this scandal could go, and whether her name was only the beginning. The floodgates opened the moment the segment ended. Within minutes, mainstream outlets picked up the clip, Crockett confronts Owens on live TV with federal docs. Political analysts scrambled to decode the memo Jasmine had waved like a sword, while Owens' team issued a hastily written press release calling the claims reckless, defamatory, and politically motivated. But in the control room of Capitol Focus, producers were already preparing for damage control. Dana Mitchell's phone buzzed with a message from the network president: secure full copies of Crockett's documents. We need legal review ASAP. Meanwhile, backstage, Jasmine Crockett was swarmed by reporters. She kept her tone measured, repeating one phrase again and again: the public deserves transparency. No matter whose name is on the check. Candace Owens, surrounded by her own team, took a different path, straight to her waiting car, ducking reporters, no comment. But the damage was growing. That night, news broke that the Department of Justice had confirmed a preliminary inquiry into Liberty Path Forward and associated relief disbursements. Though no names were officially released, Jasmine's broadcast had already connected the dots. By morning, Owens' corporate sponsors began asking quiet questions. A few issued statements reaffirming their commitment to financial transparency. One even paused their contract with a media entity linked to her. The echo chamber was beginning to crack. And Jasmine? She was on a red-eye back to D.C. Phone in hand, scrolling through texts from colleagues, constituents, and even a few Republican lawmakers, who privately admitted, "We didn't know you had all that respect." She smiled to herself. Because she did. And she wasn't done. By the next morning, Jasmine Crockett had gone from a headline to a movement. Cable news ran loops of her confrontation with Candace Owens. Op-eds praised her poise, while conservative outlets scrambled to discredit her. But what couldn't be ignored anymore was the document trail, and the thunder that followed it. The House Oversight Committee released a statement confirming they had expanded their inquiry to include multiple third-party organizations suspected of improper lobbying and misuse of federal funds. Though the names were still sealed, the implications were unmistakable. Candace Owens attempted to regain footing with a live-streamed rebuttal on her own platform. Sitting at a sleek white desk, she began, "This is what happens when truth is sacrificed for political stunts. Jasmine Crockett ambushed me with half-baked reports, none of which show wrongdoing on my part." She leaned into the camera, steely-eyed. "And make no mistake, this isn't about ethics. It's about revenge politics, plain and simple. But I'm not backing down." But the internet wasn't buying it. Investigative journalists had already begun cross-referencing Crockett's evidence. Independent fact-checkers confirmed at least 2 of the documents were authentic, specifically the calendar entry and the lobbying language linked to Owens' former nonprofit. Crockett, meanwhile, wasn't celebrating. She spent the morning in a closed-door meeting with committee members, dropping more files and laying out her case for full hearings. This wasn't about a TV moment anymore. It was about accountability. And she was methodical, surgical, even as the headlines blared her name. That evening, as Crockett exited the Capitol, a reporter called out, "Do you believe Candace Owens will be subpoenaed?" Jasmine paused, glanced back with a raised brow, and said, "If the committee wants answers, they'll go wherever the truth leads." Then she walked away. And America followed. The following week was a political firestorm. Congressional staffers worked overtime. Subpoenas were quietly drafted. Lobbying disclosures once buried under bureaucratic dust were unearthed, reviewed, and, thanks to Jasmine Crockett, suddenly front and center in the national conversation. Candace Owens, once untouchable in her media orbit, now faced daily scrutiny. Her old interviews were rewatched, dissected. Every donation linked to Liberty Path Forward was placed under a microscope. More troubling, former staffers began talking, some anonymously, others on record. One former PAC intern, speaking with a major network, confirmed what many feared: there was a strategy to blur the lines between commentary and influence. Contracts, talking points, and outreach lists, we were told to keep things off paper. That's why no one thought this would surface. But it had surfaced. And Jasmine Crockett was leading the charge. Back in Washington, she was working behind the scenes with lawmakers from both parties, quietly building a coalition not just to expose the misuse of funds, but to rewrite the rules that allowed it to happen in the first place. The Oversight Committee scheduled an emergency session. On the witness list, representatives from 2 media firms, 1 former congressional aide, and a name that shocked even insiders, Candace Owens, requested to testify under oath. That news broke live on air during a national broadcast. Owens, watching from her private office, froze. Her team immediately urged her to decline, citing legal exposure. But declining wasn't an option. Because by now, even her allies were beginning to pull away. One prominent senator, once a vocal supporter, was quoted off-record saying, "She's radioactive right now." Crockett buried her. And Jasmine? She didn't gloat. She didn't tweet. She didn't hold press conferences. She just prepared. Because the next hearing would be public. And the nation would be watching. The day of the hearing arrived like a storm. Cameras lined the marble halls of the Rayburn House office building. Journalists filled every seat. The world wasn't just watching, it was holding its breath. Candace Owens entered through a side door, escorted by her legal team. Her once defiant swagger had softened into tight professionalism. No flashy soundbites. No smirking for the cameras. Just silence and a stack of notes clutched in her hands. Across the chamber sat Representative Jasmine Crockett, sharp, composed, her expression unreadable. The chair gavelled the hearing to order. Witnesses were sworn in. Then came the fireworks. Candace was asked the question everyone waited for: did you knowingly assist Liberty Path Forward in coordinating messaging to influence federal relief allocations? She paused. Her attorney whispered something. I did not knowingly break any laws, she said carefully. But I now realize some of the communications may have crossed ethical lines. It wasn't an admission of guilt, but it was close. And in politics, perception is everything. Then it was Jasmine Crockett's turn. She didn't grandstand. She didn't lecture. She simply slid a final document into the record, a signed contract between Liberty Path Forward and a media strategy firm, dated 1 week before Candace's March 6 email. This, Jasmine said, is the missing link. Proof that the influence campaign wasn't just careless, it was calculated. The room fell quiet. Even the opposition had no immediate rebuttal. By the time the hearing ended, it was clear, the political landscape had shifted. Owens left under a cloud, her brand shaken and her allies retreating. Meanwhile, Crockett walked out to a round of quiet applause from fellow lawmakers, Republicans and Democrats alike. That night, every network headline was the same: Owens cornered, Crockett's bombshell reshapes political media ethics debate. But Jasmine didn't celebrate. Instead, she stood outside the Capitol, looked straight into the cameras, and said, "This was never about me versus Candace. This was about power being held accountable, no matter where it hides." And with that, she turned and disappeared into the building. Not for the spotlight. But for the next battle.